Hi, my name's Andrzej Marczewski. I'm the owner of Gamified UK. I'm a gamification consultant and blogger and recent author of Even Ninja Monkeys Like to Play. And I am really excited and honoured and grateful to Ivan and Miroslava, who have invited me to speak to you guys at the Coursera Gamification Learning Hub in Moscow. I think it's actually the first time I've been streamed to Russia, and it's a great honour, and I'm really looking forward to it. The talk today will be about gamification user types and player types and how we can use them in our real designs, in the sort of things you'll be doing day to day if you become a gamification designer, hopefully. What we're going to look at today is some stuff to do with Bartle's types and then some stuff to do with my types. I will stop in a couple of places to let you ask questions as well. Let's start with player types. Spoken about Bartle, he's the most famous of the player types with his killers, achievers, socializers and explorers. This is a model that gets used everywhere from marketing to sales to writing to games to everything. And I'll come back to that in a moment and the problems with that. This is something called Amy Jo Kim's social types, which you may have seen. Amy Jo Kim is a very famous games designer, and she came up with a way of looking at the player types around social interactivity. And they're very good and very useful. This one called Playnomics. This is based around a lot of research the company did for it. They're not as well known, but they're an interesting one, and there are some marketers especially who like this one. And then there's the 4 Keys to Fun from Nicole Lazzaro. Now, Nicole Lazzaro is another very famous game designer, and she is famous for this 4 Keys to Fun idea. Did a lot of lab-based research on how people reacted to games and what they actually found fun, and came up with 4 different areas: hard fun, easy fun, serious fun, and people fun. Now, they're not so much user types as things that people enjoy and how they enjoy it, and actually good games tend to use all 4 of these types of fun, and that was what she was working on. She's now doing a lot of work in virtual reality and augmented reality, so keep an eye out for her name, Nicole Lazzaro. So, all of these things were meant for games. They were meant for the player types initially from Bartle were meant for his mud system, this one down the bottom in what looks like a DOS window, which evolved into things like World of Warcraft at the top. They're meant for games like Candy Crush and Farmville. And the point is, they were designed for people who are a bit more like this. So they're designed for people who are enjoying themselves. They've been voluntarily entered into the system and are playing of their own free will. And hopefully they're enjoying it. I mean, these faces are amazing. And these were captured as a project for PlayStation, for Sony. And these were the reactions people were having to playing games on the PlayStation 3. Some look a bit scary, some I have no idea what they're playing, but it looks good. But these are the kinds of people that a lot of times in gamification you'll hear, oh, this is the kind of thing we're going to get them to do. These are the people we want to see. Now, of course, reality is a little bit different. In reality, these are the sorts of things people are really using. They're using spreadsheets, they're using Excel, they're using Amazon, they're using vending machines, they're using Twitter and Quora. And in fact, here you can see my wish list, Batman books mostly. So it's an insight into my mind a bit. And we're looking at people who look like this on a day-to-day basis. Now, raise your hands if you recognise any faces here, any reactions you've had at work yourself, because I know I tend to be the guy on the top left shouting at his screen. Yes, exactly. So these are the people we're really designing for. We're not designing for people who are playing games, we're designing for people who are using spreadsheets and who are using websites and things that really aren't all that much fun in reality. Now, if we go into Bartle's types, and the reason I use Bartle's types is because, one, they are very good for games, and two, he's a very nice guy that I speak to quite regularly. So he started off with this idea that you could break down the behaviours of people within his massively multiplayer dungeons into 4 basic groups. And they were the people who were acting on players, interacting with players, acting on the world, or interacting with the world. So the ones who were acting on players, he describes as the killers. Now, this is a very misunderstood type. Often when you hear about killers, people are talking about the winners, the ones who want to win, the ones who want to be best. As Bartle describes them, they're actually the ones who want to humiliate you. They want to hurt you. They want to destroy you. And they want to do it because they find it enjoyable. Now, you can already see that in the real world, this is an awkward group. When I'm talking to my CEO or my manager, I don't really want to talk to him about a group of people who want to kill everyone. That doesn't go down very well in the enterprise. So that was my first kind of issue with this. Other than that, achievers, they're the ones who like to collect things. Explorers are the ones who want to find how the world works. So they're the ones who'll find the Easter eggs, they'll find the loopholes, they'll find the edge of the world. And socializers are the ones who want to interact with other people. Now, the key thing here is that with Bartle's model, he was modeling behaviors in a game. And he was able to see if somebody went in as a killer, very often they ended up being a socializer after many months of play. And this is a really important factor, that the type that somebody is when they first enter the system isn't the same type they're likely to be when they finish. They evolve, the way they use the system changes. And this is true in games and true in gamification. Somebody might start off exploring the system, but then eventually starts using the system properly. So you have to plan for this kind of evolution of the user. Now, what Bartle then worked out was that these 4 types didn't really cover everyone properly. So he created this much more complicated model. So Bartle realised that just saying people were killers was a bit simple. So he split the types into 8 different types that kind of gave almost a good and a bad side of personalities. So the killer, you have the ones who wanted to hurt and destroy, he called the griefers. And then he created this group, the politicians. And now the politicians are the ones who will do things to people with their best interest at heart. So like real politicians, they have a view of how the world should be, and they will try and convince you to be like that. So they're not inherently bad. They're acting in what they think is your best interest, which may not always be. But anyway, the point was he realised that those 4 types really didn't explain how people use the games. Now, like I said, this is a very, very game-orientated system. And when you speak to Richard Bartle or when you listen to his talks, he goes on to say that one of the things he really dislikes is people using his system and then telling him it doesn't work. So what I mean by that is people will build a system for killers or for hackers or for scientists or whatever it might be in the real world with a website or with a first-person shooter game or something like that. And then they'll moan because the players didn't behave the way his model said it would behave. And he goes at great pains to explain that that's because you're not using it for a massively multiplayer game. You're using it for something else. So it won't work necessarily. It might, but it's not guaranteed. Which is where my stuff came in. The user type's Hexad. A couple of years ago, I started looking at player types because I, like Bartle, thought there must be a way of, if not breaking down people's kind of motivations, at least a way of explaining and being able to plan for them and build for them. Because at the end of the day, gamification, we have to get results. A game, when you're testing it, can fail, and you can update it and work with it. The problem with gamification is we don't have that luxury. It has to work quite quickly, because if you're in a corporate environment, they aren't going to throw money at it if it doesn't work. So you have to prove your case very quickly. Games, if Activision say we're going to make a new Call of Duty, people will give them money. It's quite simple. Call of Duty, it works, people will buy it, it will make us millions, here's the money. You go around to your boss and say, well, I want to make this thing which is called a gamified environment. Okay, so when you go into a corporate environment, you can't turn around to your boss and say, I want lots and lots of money to do this thing called gamification, because they don't understand it yet. When you finally convince them to give you the money, because you've told them all about the engagement and you've shown them the case studies, you then have to prove it works really quickly. So the point with my user types was to help people plan for the different types of people they might see in the system. Now, I started looking at motivation. And I know that the Coursera course talks about Daniel Pink's drive, and I think it talks about self-determination theory. And these are 4 basic motivators. There's relatedness, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Now, relatedness is interaction with other people. It's talking to people, it's family relations, it's work, your work environment, the people you work with. Autonomy is freedom. It's freedom of choice, it's freedom to create, it's freedom to explore. That's one that companies have a lot of difficulty with, because it's the freedom to do things the way you want to do them, which is quite a difficult concept in some companies. Mastery, which is the wish to be good at things, to achieve things. You're all on your path to mastery of gamification at the moment, because you're doing the Coursera course, and you're sat here listening to me. And purpose in this greater meaning. So what I mean by that is we all do what we do because we either have to do it or because we want to do it. But sometimes it's nice to know that what we're doing will help others. It has a greater purpose beyond just our own needs. So when you look at Wikipedia, thousands upon thousands of people voluntarily update Wikipedia on a daily basis. They get no credit for it, they get no money for it, but they feel they are contributing to the world's greater knowledge. So that's what purpose is here. And sometimes purpose can be a lot simpler. It can be just feeling that there's somewhere you're going. So if you look at a video game, it's the story. Your purpose is often to save the princess, or to rescue the prince, or to save the world from the aliens. That's your simple purpose. But it's always something greater than just doing right now. There's something more to it. So based on those, I came up with initially 4 types. Philanthropists, who are the ones that are looking for that greater purpose. And when you're looking at philanthropy, it is the people in systems who will answer questions. They will look after other users, so they're your administrators and moderators in forums. They're the guys who, on systems like Stack Exchange, will spend their day answering people's questions. They're not interested in the shiny rewards. What they're interested in, they get their kick from helping. Free spirits, who want to either explore the system or create new things for the system. They don't want to be held back by the system. They want to find everything that it can do. Now, in a video game, these are the guys who love Minecraft. You all heard of Minecraft? Hands up. Yeah, nodding, hands up, perfect. So this is a game which is beyond simple initially. I interviewed, what's his name, Notch, when Minecraft won one of its many awards years ago. And he said he was amazed at what people were doing with such a simple game. He couldn't believe people had taken this simple mining game and had started creating working computers. They'd started creating roller coasters. And these were your free spirits, your explorers, your creators, because the world didn't hold them back. They could do what they wanted. There were certain rules. You could only build up, whatever it is, 64 blocks, only dig down 64 blocks. You had to have certain combinations, but they could really express themselves. Socializer. So this is the ones who are looking for relatedness. They're your Twitter users. They're your people who, within a system, will promote the system if they like it. They'll tell their friends about it. They're the guys who make things viral. You know, they're the ones, if you can hook into them, they can make your platform go viral. Achievers. These are the guys who, like you, are trying to improve themselves in some way. They're looking for challenges. They're looking for ways to prove that they have learned something. And then you have these other two. Let's take a sip of my coffee quickly. You have the disruptor and you have the player. Now, these guys came later in my developments. The players are the ones who very much are like Bartle's group. They're the ones who are looking to collect things. They're the ones who are looking for your leaderboards, for your points, for your badges. When you initially set your system up, a lot of people will come into it as a player type because they will be interested in the things that they can win within the system. The point with them is they won't stay engaged for very long unless you can keep adding new things to the system all the time. When you look at World of Warcraft, you get all these guys coming in, they're playing, they're collecting everything, but after a few months they've reached level 70, so there's nothing else for them to really collect. So they then start using Warcraft as a social network. And as I explained to a friend a while back, you know, it's a social network where you can hit your friends with a big axe. You can't do that in real life, but you can do that in World of Warcraft. If you look at Richard Bartle's Mud, he created that, or he helped create that in the 80s, and people are still using it. But they aren't playing the game anymore, they're just going on there to chat to people. So whilst you might engage the players quickly, and a lot of gamified systems are built just for players, as we're seeing, that engagement drops very quickly unless you can keep adding things they want, which can get expensive. And then the disruptor. Now, the disruptor is an awkward group because they will either make or break a system. And what I mean by that is they're the ones who will either try and destroy the system because they don't like it, or they'll try and destroy the people in the system because they don't like it. On the other side of things, they also might find all the problems of the system and help you fix it. They might, because they're driven to find these things, they might build the patches for your system. Again, if you look to the game world, there are lots of games that have been discontinued that people keep improving. They keep adding new patches to it. So they're great. The problem is that if you don't look after them, they'll then just start breaking the system down. And we'll come on to them a bit more at the end. But players and disruptors are an interesting group who have to be looked after. And I'll explain a little bit more about them at the end. So, any questions about those for now?
Yeah, the question is why the circle in the middle is broken in some places. I've always wondered about that as well.
You know, so few people notice that. So the magic circle, I can't remember the guy's name, but very, very famous philosopher in games. He created this concept of the magic circle. And the magic circle is the protective bubble that we put ourselves in when we play. So when you're in a game, the magic circle is the environment around you. And it's this shield that protects you from the real world, which is how you get immersed into a game. Now, in the user types, the socializer, the player, and the achiever all need this magic circle. They need to be encompassed within the system. The philanthropist, the disruptor, and the free spirit don't. They are actually looking to... The philanthropist doesn't care about the game. The disruptor is interested in the game in as much as what they can break or change, and the free spirit is interested in how they can get more from the game and how they can break the boundaries. So the broken line just represents that they don't really need that magic circle, but the guys at the bottom of the Hexad do need that. So if your system doesn't provide some way of shutting out the real world, then the socializers, players, and achievers have less to hook on to. So that's what it is. It represents who needs the magic circle and who doesn't. And I'm very, very impressed you noticed that. All these things are very good, but you need to actually have some practical ideas on how to use them, which is where these slides come. Now, I have spent time looking at mechanics and elements of games, things that other people are using, and tried to map them to my types. Originally, like all my stuff, it was done just on my own research. But in the last year, there have been 3 different studies, one by MIT, one by the Austrian Institute of Technology, and one by a university in Dublin by a guy called Barry Herbert, who have all been looking at my user types and how you can use them, and whether or not the mechanics that I chose actually do support the users I say. And so far, the evidence is saying that mostly I was right. There are some bits where they can't prove it or disprove it, but if anyone's had an academic background, you'll know that proving or disproving a theory is not very important. As long as you can make up a reason why they should work, it's fine. So that's where these come from. So for purpose, for the philanthropist, we're looking at what's called serious fun from Nicole Lazzaro's Keys to Fun. So they're looking for meaning. They're looking to be able to caretake, so look after other people. They're looking at access for them, and you're looking to engage the philanthropist types, offer them extra access and tools to help people. They're looking to collect and trade, so they're looking to collect things that other people might find useful and trade them with them, because they might feel that that helps them in some way. They're looking to gift and share. So again, if there's a system where they can collect things, they're the ones who'll donate credits to someone who needs them more than them. They're looking to share the content that they've created and can give to other people if it will help them. And as I said, sharing knowledge. They want to give their knowledge and they want to give it to people because they get their joy from helping others. They're a really great group to use if that system needs it. So a system like Yahoo Answers, or have you heard of Quora? A question and answer system. So they're the ones who will spend lots of time answering people's questions in those. The free spirit, easy fun. So they're looking for exploration, Easter eggs, choice, content, creativity and customization. Now, this sounds very easy if you're thinking about a video game. If you're thinking about a gamified system, it becomes less easy. So if you think about them as the ones who, if you give them tools to create new content, so if you're creating a education system, they're the ones who might try and produce their own questions, their own quests for people. If you're looking at a learning system, they're the ones who like to have choices on whether they have to learn ABC or BCA or BZD. They'll jump around and do their own thing. They'll be the ones who'll look for little Easter eggs. So I hide messages in my code when I'm creating a website. So if you go to my website at the moment, there's in the source code, there's a password that takes you that allows you to go to a page that unlocks the page and just has a message, that sort of thing. And a few people have found it. They've gone in and they found this code. They're looking for customization as well. So if you have a system where people can create their own avatar, the face and the costume or whatever, they're the ones who'll probably have the nicest looking ones. They'll spend time building these and will be looking for new ways to create their avatar. Achievers, again, as I said, they're looking for quests, they're looking for challenges, progression, new skills, boss battles. Now, this is a gaming concept, the idea being that they like to have a challenge that proves that they've learned what they've learned. So if you're looking at how somebody progresses, they'll start off easy, the system will get a bit harder, and then it will give them a big challenge. So in games, that's the final level, the final boss at the end of your level. In an educational system, it's a test at the end of the learning phase. So with the Coursera course, there are challenges at the end of each set of videos that you have to do. That's your boss battle to prove you've learned what you think you've learned. And certificates, because what's the point of learning something if you can't then show other people you know this? So at the end of a course, you'll get a certificate. At the end of your degree, you get a certificate. In the digital world, that might be a badge. It might be a badge of honour saying that you have completed phase 1 of your quests. So it's quite important, and it's a very extrinsic feeling thing. So, I'm going to ask this might insult some of you. Do you know the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic? Hands up. Okay, so you'll hear this a lot in gamification. Intrinsic are the things that people do because they want to do. So with my relatedness, autonomy, mastery and purpose, they're intrinsic motivations. They're something very personal to you. Extrinsic are the rewards, they're the points, the badges, the leaderboards, the certificates. Now, when you're designing a system, the intrinsic rewards are very easy to build and they're very easy to implement. The extrinsic are very easy to implement because they're things you give people. The intrinsic are very, very difficult to get right. Now, the extrinsic rewards, like certificates, can have intrinsic meaning to people. So a certificate, whilst it might be a physical reward, because somebody's had to work very hard to get it, it has a great deal of internal meaning to them. They've had to work for this, so it becomes very meaningful to them. If it's just you've gone onto a system and you've been given a badge saying hello, that has no real meaning to anyone. They didn't have to, there was no challenge to getting it. So when you're building your system, any rewards, so all these extrinsic rewards, to make them meaningful, somebody has to have done something difficult to get them or something that they feel they've earned it. And that's a very big field of research, so that's a whole other talk. But just so you've got an idea of where achiever differs from player at the moment as well. But as if by chance, player is there. So these are the guys who are looking for your points, your badges, your leaderboards, your economy, your lotteries, anything where they can gain something from the system. And not just gain experience, it's gain something that they feel is useful to them. So this is how a lot of loyalty schemes work. I go to a shop, I get my points, I can then use those points in the shop. I'm not loyal to the shop, but using that shop gives me something back, so I'm going to keep using it until I find a better offer. And I did a talk about this at Gamification World Congress this year, that there are lots of different types of loyalty, and loyalty schemes and kind of things that work for players are called mercenary loyalty. What that means is I will keep doing it until it doesn't benefit me anymore, and then I'll go and use somebody else who benefits me more. So I might use Tesco, which is a local big shopping centre here, until Asda offers me something better, and then I'll go there. So I'm not loyal, I'm loyal to the best deal. And that's the problem with just building systems that work for players. Because as soon as they stop finding rewards, you have to find this intrinsic reason for them to stay. So if you haven't converted them from being somebody who just wants points and badges to somebody who's there because the system enables them to learn something or enables them to create something or is just fun, they're going to go. But it's not all lost, because I'll show you in a minute that they don't make up a big percentage of your users. Okay, socializer. They're really interested, as I said, in people. So teams, social networks, status within the network. Some people do like, have you all used Clout at some point? Have you seen Clout, where your Twitter usage, your Facebook usage is all kind of measured, and you get a single number at the end? And a lot of people are really interested in having a very high number. And I know myself, a few years ago, I got absolutely addicted to trying to get the highest number I could get. And actually what it led me to doing was not using the system at all. I was just connecting to people. It led me to cheating because I wanted this high number. So I started using these platforms that gave you followers. If you signed up, you got followers. I started following people who had lots of followers because then they might follow me and their users might. And so I started just creating this network of people I had no interest in. And then I started creating my own content instead. And I started talking to people I liked and people who had the same interests as me, and suddenly found that my cloud score started going up. So as soon as I started using the system properly, and not just doing this real kind of player-orientated of, I just want the score, I just want the score, I just want the score. As soon as I started using the system because it gave me a bit of status, I discovered new people, I created great networks, suddenly my clout score jumped through the roof. I went from having 40 to 50 to 60. So give your socializers this way of connecting with people, and competition can be a very social thing. You'll hear a lot of people in gamification say, don't competition. What they're really saying is don't make individuals compete, because that creates barriers. If you create teams, you get the social interactivity in the teams, plus the benefit of that pushing of competition between the teams. But you can't do it for great lengths of time, because people get tired of competing with each other. Teamwork produces much better results than competition. And also, teamwork creates much longer lasting games. If you look at Call of Duty, it has some teamwork, but it's really competition based. And people will play it for a year until the next one comes out. You look at the Batman games, my favourite games. It's a single player game, and at the end of the game, you stop playing. You look at World of Warcraft, 10, 12, 13 years later, it's still massive, because they got the social stuff right. They enabled people to connect and build these relationships. And disruptors. And as I said, disruptors are looking for ways of changing the system. And that might be by changing people in the system or changing the system itself. So innovation, disruptors love innovation. You know, when I was young, a disruptor was somebody who broke things. Now disruptors are the future. And it's because if you give them the right platform, they can create wonderful changes and new things. Give them a voice. If they don't have a voice, if they don't feel they're being heard, they'll destroy the system. If they are being heard, they'll contribute. Give them the tools to develop like a free spirit. If you don't let them go off and do their things and build things, then they'll do it anyway, and probably in a way you don't want them to. So give them an API to work with. Anonymity. Now, these next three are a bit difficult. Anonymity can create the best contributions and the worst contributions. And we've all seen what happens when people have an anonymous voice. They become bullies. Very often they'll start just going at people. So you have to be very careful. Light touch, by that I mean don't lock them down. Don't force them into a pattern. Let them do their own thing and see what happens. And anarchy. And this is the one that no one does. Anarchy is just let them burn the system down and start again. You know, give them a match, give them the house, see what happens. I challenge any one of you to create a system that allows that to happen, because I've never seen it yet, but I'd love to see it happen. So, that's the Hexad. Now, I'm going to dive a bit deeper, just for a second. And this is the first time I've presented this. So, you had your 6 types. There are actually 12 types in reality, because each of the players and the disruptors are a group of people. And I'm not going to go into any detail, but just to give you an idea that you can actually break down each group into 4 other groups. So here the players, your self-seeker, your consumer, your exploiter, your networker. Now these guys, they all behave very similarly to the the 4 intrinsically motivated groups, but they're doing it just for reward. So they might help people, but it's for their own purposes. They might use a system like a consumer. They'll use the system a bit like a achiever will do, but again, just for the rewards. There's a lot about this in my book and in my website, so I'm not going to explain it here. Disruptors are the same. You have your black hat disruptors, your griefers and your destroyers who want to break the system or break the people, or you have your influencers and your improvers who want to change and improve things. Now, I'm going to go back a second. Don't worry about 12 types. I just wanted to present it because I only built the 12-sided thing a couple of days ago as a challenge from a friend of mine. Jokingly said that somebody who wanted to use my types would probably create a dodecahedron of types. And so I took that as a challenge to do it myself. And most of the things I create are because I've challenged myself to do something different. So, any questions about that quickly before I do the last straight?
Why didn't you use the type of fun for the player and disruptor types, user types? Why didn't you define what drives them? What kind of fun?
Because they... Okay, now, I've thought about this before. The players you can map pretty well to the 4 types of fun, actually, in very much the same way I have done with the ordinary types, the 4 types originally, because they are much more games related. So that maps very well. The problem with the disruptors is that it's difficult to map what they're doing, and the driving force behind them actually can be quite dark. The disruptors are more based around a very dark type of personality, and there's a personality group called the triad or the tetrad, which includes, let me get this right, psychotic, sociopath, Machiavellian, and sadist. I think that's that. I might have got one of those wrong. Which, as the name suggests, are very unpleasant people. And the griefers and the destroyers actually fit into those areas. Whereas the influencers and improvers, they are driven by purpose, so serious fun. Because they feel that what they're doing is making a difference. So actually, they're all very much driven by that one type of fun. The griefer and the destroyer is a much darker journey, and when you start looking into how they behave and why they behave that way, it's not very pleasant, which is why I don't focus on them too much, just make you aware that they exist. Now, actually, the best thing to do with them is to exclude them from the system. When you start finding people who are being very disruptive and you can't control it, and I've come across this in my systems before, the best thing to do is to shut their access down, because they're not helping anyone. They're not improving the system in any way. So that's why I didn't focus on the fun with them, because the disruptors, the funds, it's either purpose or nasty stuff. Players, yeah, they map very easily to those 4 types of fun, actually.
Is it okay to focus on just a couple of those types, or does the system need all of them to be harmoniously built and function?
That brings me to the next set of slides. So, unless there's any other questions, I'll just move on.
How often do one kind of user types convert to the other, and is there any way to control it?
Now that is where my money will come from eventually. No, Barry Herbert, my PhD friend who just got his doctorate recently, did research of in an education system, and he was mapping how if someone comes in with extrinsic motivations to the player, what they turn into over time. Now, I don't have the slide here, I will send you the slides. There is a theoretical map of how people will evolve over time. So the idea being, if they come into the system as an extrinsically motivated socializer, so a networker, that eventually they'll switch over to being a socializer. They'll find reasons to stay in the system beyond just the points. But the truth of the matter is, there hasn't been enough research done to be able to map it efficiently and be able to figure out how to change them. The best ways that I've seen so far are to use elements that concentrate on the types you're trying to encourage. So if you want a system that encourages philanthropists, so people who answer questions, you include elements in the system that encourage them. So gifting, sharing, access, knowledge sharing, that sort of thing. So you focus on that kind of gameplay, so to speak. And then you have more of a chance of converting the people who come in to what you want. But as I'll explain in a minute, it's very difficult to build a system that encourages everybody. So I'll tap into that a little bit in the next couple of slides. Okay, so I'm going to cover both of those questions a bit now as well. So I have a survey, which scientifically isn't very valid, but has a lot of people on it, so is useful. And it's what MIT are now working on, AIT are now working on, is a better survey. And what I did is I've surveyed about 2,000 people to find out what their player types are. And I found out that, generally speaking, 41% of people display an achiever type. They'll have different types as well. They don't have an individual type normally. They'll be an achiever socializer, or they'll have bits of everything in there. But 41% display achiever, 20 socializer, 15 free spirit, 9% philanthropist, 8% disruptor, and 7% player. Now, the really, really interesting thing about this is most gamified systems concentrate on the player. They concentrate on that little 7% of people. Now, this is an old version based on 1,300 people. We're up to about 2,000. But the numbers haven't really changed. So when you design your system with points and badges and leaderboards, you're engaging 7% of your population after a bit of time. It might start off with a higher percentage, but you'll drop down to about 7%. If you don't have anything in there for people who want to achieve things, you're knocking out 41% of people. Socialisers, 20. And socialiser group grows with time as well. You know, these percentages change over time. So it's really, really important to not just focus on those points and badges. It's to focus on these intrinsic reasons for people to play. Now, when you're building a system, you can just focus on one particular type, if that's all you're interested in. But a kind of an analogy or a story I give is if you create a question and answer system where you want people to help each other, your first thought is philanthropists, because they're going to answer the questions. So that's 9% of people. But you want people to ask questions. There's no point answering things if there's nothing to ask. So you actually want to include socialisers, because they invite people to the system. And they'll want to invite people like achievers who want to gain knowledge. So actually your system has to bring in socialisers, it has to bring in achievers, and you might want to bring in free spirits, because often they're the ones who'll explore the system and find interesting things out for other people. So if you've got somebody who sits between philanthropist and free spirit, they might then explore the system to find the answer for an achiever who's asked a question, not invited by a socialiser. So what you suddenly find is that whilst you might want to focus on philanthropists, actually you need everybody else to make that system work. And not only that, you probably need the players, because you'll need to build a system that introduces them. So the onboarding, as it's called. So what you'll find is, if you look at something like Amy Jo Kim's player journey, which I think Kevin Werbach uses, you have your onboarding phase, which is the players. You have your habit forming phase, which is your sort of free spirits, achievers, and socialisers all using the system, and you have your mastery phase, which is your experts, your philanthropists. So everything needs to be included. And the really key thing to remember about all of these types is people aren't just one type. They can be lots of different types. And there'll be lots of different types depending on what they're doing. So if you look at video games, when I'm playing Call of Duty, I like to collect things. I like to get all the guns. So I am an achiever on the Bartle scales. When I'm playing something like Minecraft, I'm an explorer because I like to explore. When I'm playing Grand Theft Auto, I'll start off as a killer because I just love breaking stuff. Then I'll turn into an explorer, an achiever, because I'll start collecting things. And then over time I become an explorer because then I get bored of just playing the rules and I start trying to find things. So whatever you do, people will change. And if you can encourage the mechanic or use the mechanics that encourage what you want them to become, brilliant. But if you can build a system that encourages all of it, you have a lot more opportunity to engage people. And as my final slide says, everybody is different. Everybody who comes into your system has a different reason to be there normally. And if all the player types do and all the user types do is remind you that what you enjoy, other people might not enjoy, and that you can't just design the system you would like, you have to design the system that lots of people like, then you're more likely to succeed. And that's my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thomas, sharing.
Yeah. Now we are ready for some more questions and answers. Yeah.
And do you have a real-life example of some system designed for Disruptor, which worked, which wasn't banning?
Yes. So, if you consider an innovation platform, such as Spigot, you heard of Spigot? No? Okay, so it's an innovation platform that the company now am I allowed to say this? Yeah, not quite out of my contract. Company I previously worked for. If you look up a case study for EDF Capgemini, you'll see a case study for an innovation platform that we implemented for them. And the point was we had a group of really innovative, disruptive people in the company who wanted to drive change and wanted to bring things forward. And what this system did was give them a voice. And it allowed them to put all their ideas into this system, vote on each other's ideas on things they thought were really good, and then whoever's idea floated to the top then got to present it to somebody who could make it happen. And this was brilliant because they went from a put your hand over mouth when you're yawning man. What they did was they went from having 10 ideas on a social platform to having 130 ideas in this innovation platform. Because suddenly, not only did they have a voice, they knew they were being heard by other people. Other people could come on and say, that's rubbish, I hate it, change it this way, so you're improvers. You had the influencers who were trying to create social groups to vote their platform up. You had systems in place that happen as well. You had groups who were trying to stop it happening. And at the end of it, they had these great app ideas that then got built and used within the company. So, yeah, that was all about disruptors. It was brilliant, and it worked really well because very positive. Now, the only thing that happened and the lesson that we learned from it was somebody decided, it wasn't me, somebody decided to add a reward. I think it was an iPad or something. And suddenly, they started to play the system. So first of all, it was brilliant. They were all doing it because they wanted to do it. Somebody added a reward, and all the players came in, and they started to break the way the system was, and they started to rig the voting. And that's when the system broke down. And suddenly, all these guys who had been doing it because they wanted to get heard stopped using it for a while. So there's a really key lesson here, and I've seen it happen lots and lots of times. As soon as you add a reward, you change the way the system works. And a very good example of this was a platform that I reviewed after it had been implemented, had introduced an iPad for people to do a quiz. which wasn't a huge problem because there was nothing really enjoyable about the quiz. We hadn't taken it, or they hadn't taken into account the geographical value of the reward. So in the UK, the reward was nice. In India, the reward was 3 months' wages. So for me, it was a couple of weeks' work. For them, it was a few months' wages. So of course, for them, this reward was huge. They wanted it. So what we ended up with was some guy creating, because one of the ways he got points was by inviting people to the system. He created scripts that invited people to the system, and when that was too slow, he manually invited 8,000 people. Now take that into account. This is during his day job. He was manually inviting 8,000 people because he wanted that iPad so badly. And the rules didn't prevent him from doing it. Now, on the one hand, he wasn't cheating. So all of the guys who were playing the system properly, they were like, oh, this guy's cheated. And when I reviewed the system with them afterwards, because they said, you know, Andrzej, what have we done? How do we fix this? I said, well, he's not broken the rules because you didn't write any rules. There was nothing in the rules that said you couldn't do it. So there's a real life lesson here. Define the rules if you want people not to break the rules. If there are no rules, they can't break them. And what I might think is cheating, you might not think is cheating. You know, if you've got somebody who's an achiever who's worked really hard to get all his stuff, but a player can buy all the stuff, the achiever's going to think the player's cheating. The player's just going, no, the rules say I can buy it. What we did with this guy, and I felt a bit sorry for him actually, but what we did with him is he had broken one of the company rules on the usage of email. And he got kicked out, and he actually got reprimanded by his manager. But really, he did the system properly. He was just really good at the game. So there's my examples.
Andrzej, can you talk a little bit more about the mix of players? So I don't see that the person is 100% extrovert. Person can be, 40% socializer and 60% achiever. Can you talk a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you test people for this, and when you've done, if you go onto my website and look for user types, one of the links is to a test, and so you can see what kind of what motivations you have to do a test. Basically, is what it tells you. But what you'll see is that you'll have a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of the other, and very few people come out as a single type. Because, and I got really slaughtered for doing this. It's because there was a book written about me and how wrong I was about types. And the problem was, I hadn't really said people are very complicated. I'd implied it, but I hadn't said it. So here it is, people are really complicated. And you can't define a person by a single action or by a single interest. So yes, everybody will split down a little bit. So you might have a bit of socializer in you and a bit of explorer in you. So when you go into a system, you might explore it, but you might also chat to people and talk away and kind of socialize. So when you're building a system, you have to really be conscious of that even if you test them before they come in, if all you do is focus on the type that has the highest value. So if you come out as 40% achiever, 20% socializer, 20% philanthropist, and what we're left with 20% explorer. There you go. There's my maths today. If I just focus on the 40%, you've still got 60% of things left behind that need to be looked at. And so I'm not really going to engage you. I've got to do more. I've got to hook into these other bits. So what it's really useful to do is to say, lots of people in your system find this interesting, but they also find all these other things interesting that you've got to look at. So, things that will appeal to all of the types you find. Now, if you test your entire audience before they go into the system, and you see that not one person has any interest at all in achievement, then it's probably safe to say you don't need to build a system that has achievement, has challenge and stuff. But it's not to say that after a few months of being in the system, they won't get bored of what's there and want more challenge. Yeah? So you've got to be able to adapt. So one of the key things to any good system is that it can evolve. If you look at Farmville, they measured everything, every action, every interaction. And what they found was, when people got to certain parts, they found it difficult, so they changed the way it worked. They either rewarded it more, so people sort of got past the difficulty to get the reward, or they made it easier to do, so that people just swept through it. So when you're building your system, you need to be able to sort of turn taps on and off. If you need more achievers in the system, you need to be able to turn on a bit more challenge. If you need more socializers in the system, you need to turn on a bit more social network. Yeah? So that's kind of how to deal with it and big sort of stress that these percentages exist in people.
I have a question. So we have an example previously about Google News, and they fail with badges. So it's really easy to imagine how you can apply gamification to something like Wikipedia. But for example, for something like Google News sites, or maybe, I don't know, New Yorker Times, or New Yorker or New York Times, so how they can apply gamification, maybe some use cases?
Okay, so Google News failed because the badges had no reason to exist. People didn't need them or want them. However, they also had another product, Google Reader, which was a really good RSS system, which I used to use. And one of the things they'd done really well in that was added social, because you could like something and promote it to your friends, and your friends could like it, and you could share this knowledge. Now, the thing that they just got so wrong with Google News was they'd forgotten the reason people are reading news is because it interests them, and they're interested in learning about the news. So all they needed to do was allow people to easily share that news with their friends. That's really all it had to do. Instead, what they did was they said, well, we can reward them for sharing. Well, somebody who's doing something anyway, it's actually insulting. If you think about this, I donate £10 to charity, and somebody gives me £5 back, saying thank you very much. That's actually an insult, because I didn't do it for a reward. So you can actually, people who are doing things for philanthropic reasons can get insulted by being given rewards. So systems that have done it very well, I think it's not quite the same. I think Quora, actually no, Stack Exchange gets it very right, because Stack Exchange has a really gamified system. It has all of the points and it has all the leaderboards and stuff, but it doesn't focus on them. They're there to help you discover other people. So if I've got a question on JavaScript and I go onto a JavaScript leaderboard and see that Jeff is the best at JavaScript, answering JavaScript questions, then I'll go and ask him a question. If you look at the gamification guru's leaderboard, so all the gamifiers are gamified. We're all on this big leaderboard. I use that as a social network tool. It's a discovery tool for me. I go onto the leaderboard, see who's in the top 10, and make sure I'm following them on Twitter and talk to them, because I know they have the same interests as me and they probably know what they're talking about. It also helps I've been at the top of the leaderboard many times as well. That's nice, but you know, it's a social discovery tool. So systems that do it well, they use the gamified tools as a way of thanking people and a way of telling other people that these are the people who are good at something. So it's more about status than it is reward. And that's where the Google News thing was wrong, because it didn't matter if I got a badge for sharing 6 news items. Like on my website, I have gamification because it's a gamification website. But I also know that it's not very good because it just rewards you for sharing and it puts you on a leaderboard. So some people enjoy it for a few minutes and then give up on it. I had one guy who went absolutely mad on it. He shared everything, he liked everything, he sat at the top of the leaderboard for months, and then suddenly realised he hadn't got anything else to share because he'd shared everything. I was only producing content once a week, so the points and badges had no interest anymore. And then he started trying to break it. He became a disruptor. He's actually why the disruptors exist, this guy, is because he started to try and see how he could cheat the systems. So if he left 100 comments with one word in them, he got 100 points, that sort of thing. So so systems that get it right, Stack Exchange, they get points and badges right because they don't focus on them. Quora gets voting very right because it puts the good answers at the top. Systems that get it very wrong are often YouTube, because if you go onto YouTube and you just don't like somebody, you can vote them down. You can vote their video down. So anywhere you can get a down vote can go very wrong sometimes, which is why Facebook doesn't do it. Facebook gets gamification right because you can like stuff and share it, so you can see what's good. LinkedIn, they have some good and some bad gamification because they've got good gamification where it tells you if you haven't finished your profile. They've got bad gamification because you can constantly tell people that they're good at a particular skill that they're not interested in. I keep getting voted for really good at CSS, and I don't want that anymore. I want people to vote me good at gamification and consulting, but no, they keep voting me for HTML and web design and social media, that sort of thing. So, and because it's really easy, you just tap a button constantly. Oh, he's good, he's good. You can sit there for half an hour just tapping the button, saying people you've never met are good at deodorant. You know, so I think that answers your question.
It will be a question about Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, for me, you have like a user. You have like a user journey when griefer, self-seeker, destroyer, and others come in to networker, exploiter, and then at the end of the day, they will become a socializer and free spirit. For me, it's like they are coming from the black hat side to the white hat side. And the question is there opportunity to increase the velocity of the user journey?
In theory, yes. Because if you concentrate on the things that improve the system, then you should, in theory, be able to encourage that behaviour. Now, I say theory because people react differently to things. Now, let me show you. This is the journey you're talking about. Okay, so this is the proposed journey based on things. So, in theory, if they come into the system as a purely extrinsically motivated person, if you encourage philanthropy and achiever nature, then they should switch over to it. And then eventually, as the course of the system goes on, then they can convert over to being a socializer or a free spirit. Now, the reason that you don't automatically go to everything is because you learn certain skills as you go through, and philanthropists don't tend to learn the skills they need to become a free spirit because they're quite fixed in their mindset. So it's kind of, this is something I'm working on. Now, all I'd say is to encourage the white hat, make the system more rewarding to that behaviour. And when I say rewarding, I mean make sure that the intrinsic motivations are catered for much more strongly than the extrinsic. So make sure that they get that buzz from helping people, they get that buzz from achieving things, they get that buzz from exploring, more than you just give them points for doing it. That's the only way to encourage that kind of behaviour. Or the flip side is punish the wrong behaviour, but that's a bit frowned upon.
Yeah, but I believe that at the right side, at the white hat side, there exists this point like over justification, and I'm just a bit afraid that if I would reward them, it will be not really good for these white hat guys.
So, I mean, when you're building a system, by the time they've got there, they shouldn't need rewards. So they should have. You use the rewards to get people into the system, and then the rewards should really tail off. You don't just keep giving the same amount over and over again. By the time they've hit the right-hand side, really they should be your system should have put them in a position where they don't need those rewards, and you don't have to keep giving them to them. If your system relies on constantly giving them the rewards, then yeah, they aren't going to be intrinsically motivated. they're going to keep coming back for the rewards, and that's where the over-justification effect comes in, where they're only doing it for reward, and as soon as the reward stops, they stop using it. So you kind of, it's like a baby with a bottle. You've got to slowly take the bottle away and replace it with food. You don't just suddenly take it away from them.
Thank you, that's it. Thank you very much for your time. It's been highly insightful. Thanks a lot.
Hi guys.
Hope you've enjoyed it too.
It's been great fun, and if you want to get hold of me, Twitter is the best way. So I'm Dave Rage, Daverage. Say hello, tell me that you were in this course, and have a chat with me.
Thanks a lot once again, and have a good time at the Star Wars movie.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
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 Bye bye.